Today's ruling involved this demonstration during the Republican National Convention in 1984, a demonstration that included the burning of the American flag.
My name is Gregory Joey Johnson. I was a person many years ago who went to the Supreme Court for burning the American flag in a protest in Dallas, Texas in 1984.
Let's take this back to 1975. That's probably when you got involved in your political activism.
One of the first acts of rebellion I did was I had gotten a copy music album called Woodstock of radical music. That included artists like Jimi Hendrix. I did this song called The Star Spangled Banner. Played it very rebelliously. I had a small record player, and we lived right next door to a motor pool, so I put my record player in the window, and the soldiers were out there working on the trucks and the tanks, gave me clenched fist salute.
Yeah, so 22nd August 1984, you were in downtown Dallas during the Republican National Convention. What really was the thinking behind finally using the flag as a symbol that you wanted to set fire to?
The reason I went to Texas, in Dallas, Texas in 1984, was that Reagan was being renominated for a second term. And Reagan had already done these themes in his first 4 years of attacking the whole ethos during the Vietnam War. And it was a very tumultuous, contentious time in American politics, and a time of radicalism where millions of people became disgusted with what this country was doing, especially in Vietnam. Genocide of upwards of 3 million people between Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia.
I don't think we should have used nuclear weapons there, but I think the North Vietnamese should have gone to sleep every night worrying about whether we would.
Reagan had made jokes about he was going to begin bombing in 5 minutes. He was going to begin nuclear war. He made jokes about these things.
Heaven forbid they're ever called upon to defend this nation. Nothing would be more immoral than asking them to do so with weapons inferior to those of any possible opponent.
At City Hall, they burned an American flag.
It's bigger than the personalities too. It is a system. The flag is a brand logo for the American empire.
Finally, Dallas police surrounded the demonstrators and began making arrests.
The American flag is more than just a piece of cloth. It's representative. It's representative of the sacrifices of American soldiers. It's representative of the triumphs and also of the struggles of the American people over the course of over 200 years.
Say 2 regular Americans came up and said, "I'm sorry, I was offended by what's happening, and the flag means something to me." What's wrong with that?
I'm not there to cater to people's prejudices or system-instilled biases, about the flag. The indoctrination that everybody gets in this country, America first, American chauvinism, American exceptionalism.
Hey, buddy, let me tell you something. My daddy died for that flag. Really? I bought mine. They sell them at Kmart and shit. Yeah, $3. He died in the Korean War for that flag. What a coincidence. Mine was made in Korea.
It's a symbol of oppression. It's a symbol of slavery. It's a symbol of genocide. It's a symbol of invasion. It's a symbol of occupation. It's a symbol of torture. This rag of empire deserves to be burned.
The whole point of it is to challenge the symbolism. This country celebrates itself as being a concentration of freedom of political expression and free speech and the rights for people to have a First Amendment, which allows for freedom of expression. But there's actually a very long history in this country of suppression of political speech exactly when it matters the most. And going back to the founding of the country, which was founded on slavery and genocide of Native Americans, in less than a decade after the Constitution was written and ratified, you had alien and sedition laws that made it a crime to speak against the government.
Gregory Johnson drew a $2,000 fine and a year in prison for violating a Texas law that makes the desecration of the flag a felony.
Desecration of a venerated object, I mean, it's turning the flag into a religious icon.
And so this was a case in which there was a criminal prosecution for an act that he claimed was simply speech.
But you were the only one who was prosecuted.
Well, I was the only one that actually returned for trial. One is the charges needed to be fought. It was very much a political trial as well, where I was being, as the prosecutor put it, load up on him, you know, make an example of him. Where the jury, all they needed to believe was that I made anti-American speeches that contributed to the atmosphere in which the flag was burned. And that was enough to convict me. They wanted to exact revenge for what we did.
You lost the first appeal. The Texas Criminal Appeals Court reversed in your favor.
My case at the highest level of appeal in Texas was the court actually ruled in my favor.
Under our Constitution, you shouldn't be able to prohibit what somebody says because you don't like their point of view.
So for all practical purposes, it was over with. Okay. But the Dallas prosecutor appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court granted certiorari, granted review. And very few cases actually get selected for review. I had a suspicion at the time that they granted review to reverse the decision in my case. There had never been a definitive ruling. So that's the issue my case resolved.
For argument next, in number 88-155, Texas versus Gregory Lee Johnson. Ms. Drew, you may proceed whenever you're ready.
When I learned that the case was going to go to the Supreme Court, you know, based on a lot of thought and reflection and discussions with my comrades, you know, we decided I needed to get a hold of Kunstler. So I sent a telegram to him. Now, William Kunstler was the most radical attorney in the United States throughout the whole 1960s.
And that's the terrible myth of organized society, that everything that's done through the established system is legal, and that word has a powerful psychological impact. It makes people believe that there is an order to life and an order to a system, and that a person that goes through this order and is convicted has gotten all that is due him, and therefore society can turn its conscience off and look to other things and other times.
The criminal justice system in America was part of reinforcing and perpetuating white supremacy and perpetuating the class oppression and the class divisions in society.
These past trials is that they have this aura of legitimacy, this aura of legality. I suspect that better men than the world has known, and more of them, have gone to their death through a legal system than through all the illegalities in the history of man.
It's important, if you're a political defendant, you were talking earlier about political trials, that you have an attorney who wants to fight both in the legal arena and out in society as a whole, to put the issues that are concentrated in the case before society as a whole.
The hundreds of rape trials throughout the South, where black men were condemned to death, all legal. Jesus, legal. Socrates, legal. And that is the kaleidoscopic nature of what we live through here and in other places. Because all tyrants learn that it is far better to do this thing through some semblance of legality.
William Kunstler, my attorney, and David Cole, who was also my attorney. Well, we had a very collaborative process for writing the briefs. And I didn't want the briefs to convey that I was in awe of the founding fathers or of the Supreme Court for that matter. These are political institutions. I wanted it to convey the internationalism, standing with the people of the world. One of the briefs that we had in the Supreme Court case, a brief from artists. And
Yes.
there were very renowned artists who thought that their artistic expression could be threatened if my conviction was upheld.
Had you not burnt the national flag, but you instead burnt the American Constitution, would that change the scenario? To you, as symbols of America, is the flag any different from the Constitution?
Book burning I have a problem with because of the whole thing. That's what the Nazis did, book burning. The point about the Constitution, specifically of it enshrining a system of exploitation and oppression. In other words, slavery got by the Constitution, wars for empire have gotten by the Constitution, the genocide of the Native Americans got by. And it wasn't just that these things slipped by. The Constitution facilitated it. The Supreme Court facilitated it. That's why I'm not in awe of these institutions.
Your Honor, we believe that if a symbol over a period of time is ignored or abused, that it can in fact lose its symbolic effect.
I don't know whether there can be any prohibition of that. It's used all over for commercial purposes. I noticed that Barbara Bush wore a flag scarf, for example. There are flag bikinis, there are flag everything. There are little cocktail flags that you put into a hot dog or a meatball and then throw in the garbage pail. They're flags under the Texas statute. They don't have to be made out of cloth. But I think there are all sorts of flags used commercially. I'm not sure in my heart whether I think there's any control over the use of the flag. Not on the criminal side, anyway. This is a fundamental First Amendment case that the First Amendment to the written Constitution is in jeopardy by statutes like this. And I wanted to essentially close with two remarks. One, Justice Jackson said in Barnett, those who begin coercive elimination of dissent soon find themselves eliminating dissenters. Compulsory unification of opinion achieves only the unanimity of the graveyard. The First Amendment was designed to avoid these ends by avoiding these beginnings. And I think that's an important statement over the years from Justice Jackson. And then he go in just a recent article in the New York Times called In Chicago, A Holy War Over the Flag by J. Anthony Lucas, a very excellent former reporter for the New York Times. He said, whatever pain freedom of expression may inflict, it is a principle on which we can give no ground. And I understand that this flag has serious, important meanings. Chief has mentioned many times that it's not just pieces of material, blue and white and red. That has real meaning to real people out there. But that does not mean that it may have different meanings to other people out there, and that they may not, under the First Amendment, show their feelings by what Texas calls desecration of a venerated object.
Today, the Supreme Court ruled such laws violate the First Amendment right to free speech and set aside Johnson's conviction.
The decision was actually 5-4 in my favor, which means it was very close.
Why you believe that people who burn the flag in America should be allowed to do so, and yet you personally, if you had the chance, would sling them all in jail?
Yeah, if I were king, I would not allow people to go about burning the American flag. However, we have a First Amendment which says that the right of free speech shall not be abridged, and it is addressed in particular to speech critical of the government. I mean, that was the main kind of speech that tyrants would seek to suppress. Burning the flag is a form of expression. Speech doesn't just mean written words or oral words. It could be semaphore. Burning a flag is a symbol that expresses an idea. I hate the government is unjust, whatever.
it's not simply a question. The First Amendment required the Supreme Court to make this decision. It could have, clearly, 5-4, it could have gone the other way. And in 1989, what was going on in the world was the collapse of what I call phony communism in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union a year later. The collapse of these regimes in Eastern Europe. And here was the US applauding political dissidents in Eastern Europe. Now, what were they going to look like if they did that? And then at the same time, we're locking up a political dissident here at home. You know, patriotism in an imperialist empire and superpower is not optional. You know, it's not something they can live with, of having people be contemptuous of their symbols of empire.
In the 1990s, I think the US did try bringing a federal law that was going to criminalize flag burning. And that was, again, struck down by the Supreme Court in the Eichmann case.
Making the point about the attempts at a new federal statute against flag burning in 1989. You know who the author of that was, of the congressional sponsor, the senator? Joe Biden, you know, who's a liberal Democratic likely candidate for president.
Trump wants people to be punished legally for desecration of the flag. Turns out Joe Biden had a similar stance back in 1989.
Rewrote the statute saying burning the flag in and of itself is a crime, period. Boom. Because if you look out there, you know, the thing that makes a Frenchman French or an Englishman English is their ethnicity. It's not what form of government they happen to live under. You can't define an American in terms anything other than the form of government that we live under. And so it seems to me that making that symbol, give it in a special place, a special unifying notion in times of peace as well as war, is an important and worthy thing to do. And that's why I introduced the bill.
It was important for millions of people to understand that even if they didn't want to burn the flag themselves, you know, which most people don't, that they not tolerate what was going to amount to forced patriotism, compulsory patriotism. In other words, if the government can tell you you can't do this with the flag, they're going to put all these constraints on expression with the flag unless it's pro-patriotic. That's a form of compulsory patriotism.
This morning, the spotlight on football star Colin Kaepernick for taking a stand by refusing to stand. The San Francisco 49ers quarterback remaining seated during the playing of the national anthem at 3 preseason games, a protest, he says, over police brutality against African Americans.
Part of what makes this country special is that we respect people's rights to have a different opinion and to make different decisions about how they want to express their concerns. And the test of our fidelity to our Constitution, to freedom of speech, to our Bill of Rights, is not when it's easy, but when it's hard.
1984 was not the only time that you burned the flag.
Right.
Yeah. I think
I burned it in 2016 outside the Republican National Convention in Ohio, where Donald Trump was nominated, because you have the finger of a demented bully on the nuclear trigger, and this whole thing of how he concentrated this ascendancy of fascism. We're living under a fascist regime that is trying to reverse verdicts on a whole lot of questions, you know, a whole lot of areas of society. They're white supremacists. They're overthrowing all the understanding from the 1960s of the fight for equality for black people.
बड़ा इजीली मतलब हम इसे पा सकते हैं, ये मौके बोलने के, सुनने के. इसलिए हम कई बार इसका महत्व नहीं जान पाते, लेकिन बहुत सारे समय पर और दुनिया के बहुत सारे हिस्सों में ऐसा नहीं हो रहा होता, और ऐसे मौके मुश्किल हो जाते हैं कि आप जब चाहें बोल सकें और लोग जब चाहें सुन सकें.
And we're having this debate about free speech in a week where the government of India has banned a film called India's Daughter, which is a documentary about the hideous Delhi gang rape, has banned that film on the grounds that it offends the honour of India and it is a defamation on that stage.
ज़माने और भी थे, हाकिम और भी थे, उनमें जालिम भी थे, जाबिर भी थे, जिनके कदमों में थे मुंशी, जिनकी असीरी में थे कलम, मगर इनमें इनकलाबी भी थे, सरगर्म शरारे भी थे, ये है उन रज़ाकारों के लिए.
Freedom of speech on trial in Turkey. Demonstrators have denounced 2 hearings at the same court in Istanbul.
The Iranian government says people have the right to express their discontent.
जिनके कलम के आगे बासजूद था जब्र जुल्म, जिनके ज़ोरे लफ्ज़ से बेबाक थे जिंदा और आज़ाद थी जिंदगी, जिनकी दियानत पे शर्मिंदा थी बख्शिशें, जिनकी बेबाकी पे नाकाम थे फरमाने खामोशी.
Well, it's a bizarre controversy that has erupted over Faiz Ahmad Faiz's noted poem Hum Dekhenge. IIT Kanpur has now formed a committee to inquire into the singing of Faiz's poem by its students in solidarity with their peers in Delhi's Jamia Millia Islamia University.
The destruction of the global environment, the genocidal persecution of black and brown people in this country, the persecution of immigrants, the oppression of women. This is and the persecution of gay and lesbian and transgender people. All these things are things that this system can't do without.
एक फ्लैग निकल के दूसरा फ्लैग लग जाए, इसको हम आज़ादी नहीं समझते. भगत सिंह भी इसको आज़ादी नहीं समझता था. और बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर ने आज़ादी की व्याख्या यह बताई है कि जब तक हर इंसान जाति के शोषण से मुक्त नहीं हो जाता, हर स्त्री पुरुष सत्ता के जाति के वर्ग के शोषण से मुक्त नहीं हो जाती, तब तक आज़ादी का मतलब हमारे लिए कुछ नहीं है.
These things need to be debated out throughout society, reform or revolution. There's a lot at stake for humanity. There's 7 billion people on the planet that this system of global capitalism and imperialism, it's not sustainable for.
Yeah. मेरे काले रंग के आगे तेरे गोरे चमड़े फीके हैं, दुश्मनों से लड़ना कैसे पुरखों से हम सीखे. मेरे रास्ते सारे खास है अपने सारे पास में अस्तित्व के वास्ते, मिटा दे सारे दूरियां घटा दे सारे फासले, मिटा दे सारे दूरियां घटा दे सारे फासले, सांस ले